There's much talk, of course, in recent weeks and months about Bangalore being the next Bay Area and how India is now smelling like Silicon Valley. We're told we are halfway there. Are we? What is it going to take to get all the way there? Can we really create a Silicon Valley in India? Is India going to be the next startup nation? That's what we are looking at as we try and understand news beyond the hype. Joining me now, Saurabh Srivastava, prolific angel investor, closely involved with TIE, and of course, also India Internet Network, Kanav Hasija, co-founder at Innovasa. Thanks both for taking our time to speak to us today. Mr. Srivastava, first to you. We're talking about digital India. We're talking about how this is going to be a game changer and going to make sort of a level playing field for all Indians and going to sort of take India to where many say she ought to have been years ago. Do you believe that we are halfway there, if not all the way there, as far as getting access to digital India to everybody?
Well, in some ways, if you look at can we be a Silicon Valley, we're part of the way there. In IT services, we are Silicon Valley. There is no cluster, no hub in the world that has created more companies, more value, more wealth. If you look at India, it's the only place in the world, I think, that has the key ingredients. We're a very diverse society, most helpful. Entrepreneurship is very much in our blood. People want to do entrepreneurship. Even when things are difficult, we're trying to find ways around it to be entrepreneurs. We didn't have a market. But now we're beginning to have a big market. And that's giving actually rise to a lot of entrepreneurship outside of even just technology. The ease of doing business, we do need still to do work on.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that in just a bit, because that's, of course, an important point. Lots of people who sort of raise questions on that. We'll get into that in just a bit. But come in there, kind of. You know, this is, of course, supposed to be the best time to be an entrepreneur in India. This world is watching, the space is buzzing, the successes, as Saurabh said, being celebrated, failure also sort of no longer taboo. It's okay, they're accepting it. For you, what do you believe were the major challenges? And sort of with the wisdom of hindsight, if you could have corrected some things, what would they be?
Yeah, we started around 3 years ago, right? And I think we picked up really well in the last year. And one of the reasons is that we do not have easy access to the angels or to the mentors, right? So if you see in the valley, the defense, NASA and IBM, this trio gave way to new startups to start in the early 80s. And then all these big corporations like Microsoft, Apple gave way to Facebook and Google, and the chain is going on. You know, we need that chain here. We need those mentors and angels here. And once I got access to them in the last year, it just kick-started.
Mr. Srivastava, you know, it's of course great when you hear, say, a Sundar Pichai say that, you know, there's Flipkart and Zomato and Snapdeal, and they're not Indian startups, they're global startups. This is, of course, a time, like you're saying, that failure is celebrated. But there are all those who perhaps want to sort of scale up. They want to say, why not us? How do we get there? And are these just flashes in the pan, or are we going to have bigger unicorns? What would you say?
No, we will have scores of unicorns. I mean, I have no doubt. What it needs is enough people to be successful. What it needs is more and more.
Because you need those role models to sort of look at.
You need role models, and you need the cluster effect. I mean, there's a reason why Florence became a center for the arts. London became center for financial services, and Silicon Valley more lately for entrepreneurship. You know, industry is not very different than agriculture.
I see.
You need a fruit trees. You know, you need to throw a lot of seeds on the ground.
And that's the point that Kanav was making. It's that kind of guidance and that kind of direction that would have.
And only time will fix it. And a lot of encouragement from government to accelerate it. And I say that because you look globally, angels are not usually Rockefellers and Fords. I mean, I know Ratan Tata is prolific, but it's a rarity. Angels are usually first-generation entrepreneurs.
Right, and we keep sort of reading about how all the big guys are trying to sort of take smaller guys under their wings, or sort of, you know, trying to encourage them, which is, of course...
This is what we need.
This is what we need.
Absolutely.
Right, I want to just turn our attention briefly to the ease of doing business. You know, people have begun talking, a lot of the, you know, Prime Minister Modi's trip in the US, all the critics here stand up and say, but what about the ease of doing business? Why are there so many people now looking at, say, a market like Singapore and saying, should we sort of head there? What's going on? You know, we still have our regulations and taxes and this act and that act. Sort of come in quickly on that.
Well, I think
how tough is it?
I think it's been very tough to do business in India. If I go
Historically.
historically, even 20 years ago was tough, even 10 years ago was tough. It's been easing gradually. The current government is very focused on making it easier. It's not that easy though to change the mindset at the level of bureaucracy.
Right.
They still have a huge level of sense of suspicion of everything. Right now in India, it's much harder to close a company than it is to start a company. We're
And
trying
that's
to
a big
find
problem
ways.
because many founders say that getting out of a I mean, I want to move on. I've got another great idea. This is not holding me back, but just the, you know, just the red tape around shutting my company down is a big
then
challenge.
some level of encouragement.
I don't have the experience of exiting a firm, but in terms of just investment point of view,
And
ease of
hopefully
doing
you
business.
don't need to.
I hope so too. So, but in ease of doing business, I would say I'm seeing a trend of a lot of investors coming into India and investing. I'm seeing VC firms doing angel funding. So Series D guys doing Series C, Series C guys doing Series B, and so on, right? So this proves that there's a lot of investors coming in. But all that's happening because India as a market is attracting the world.
Saurabh, because there, of course, this is also a very fashionable space to now be in. To be an entrepreneur now is like uber cool. You know, it's very mainstream, it's very front burner. But if those would say, is this like the .com bubble that we are sitting on? Is that something that
There is,
I mean, how would you say?
Natasha, there is a bubble of sorts, but it's not the 2001. It's not the .com
I
bubble.
see.
See, at that time, the businesses were a bubble and the valuation was a bubble. The difference today is the businesses are real.
But
so
the valuation?
Well, come to that. So the businesses are real because we do have a market.
Sure.
We do have, hundreds of millions of internet connections. I mean, valuations, yes. I think valuations are probably heated a bit. So when you have valuations, private valuations that are running way ahead of public market valuations, you obviously have a disconnect.
But are things like
Right?
this par for the course, Mr. Srivastava?
But
I mean, are these bound to happen, and then there'll be a correction, and then we'll sort of find our feet again?
This is bound to happen.
It's bound to happen. Okay.
Because when you come, particularly if the ideas are new, how do you value? I mean, how would you have valued a Google or a Facebook?
Right.
You could have got it low, you could have got it high, you do not know.
Sure.
This will happen, and I don't think we should get too
Jittery
concerned about it because at the end of it, as they say, whenever these things happen, a lot of investors lose money, but a lot of value gets created.
That's great to know. That's a very optimistic note to end on, but I'll give you the last word. This is the space that we're looking at. You're still saying that the initial people still need to be people close to you who you can trust because, while society is far more accepting, it's not a bad word now, and entrepreneurs is not necessarily a bad word, but there are still challenges along the way. How do you see this space playing out, and what is the one or two things that you believe will make all the difference?
Yeah, so I think one is that what he talked about, the critical mass of startups coming up and
the clusters that we need
employing people. That's yet to come, and once it comes, it's gonna just go forward. The second thing I think is, I see India, as I talked about the non-digital space. Digital space has got access to internet, laptops, mobiles, and people can start up, they can code and do whatever they want to do with that. But I think in the non-digital space, I want government to come up with a counterpart of NASA, like ISRO, defense organizations. I want more access to funding across universities, and startups flourishing
so
from there.
So catch them young, really, when they're sort of coming up with these ideas on campus and.
So channelize that ecosystem of the funding from the government and the private sectors to universities to have a non-digital startups that will help the bottom of pyramid, that will help the big mass that we have, right? Digital space is just able to capture the 10% of the mass, but we need more.
This was the conversation that we are going to keep having. Our focus on startups and entrepreneurs, of course, will remain, as this is a key area that we are looking at. We're going to be slipping into a quick break, but thanks so much, both Saurabh Srivastava and Srivastava for taking our time to speak to us today. Back with lots more.